Okay, I got the record on.
Okay, cool.
On Winterstein.
We're up to 30.
30 what?
30 participants. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Latecomers won't be missing a whole lot. So here we go.
Will I do nothing? You just do nothing.
You can say hello. I don't know why your picture is not on here.
Your name's up there. You don't have a picture though.
We have to start out with oranges because we're in Orange County. Recently, I found out late navel oranges stay good on the tree much longer than Washington. I did my first comparison last year. Washington started getting dry actually at the end of March. Late stayed good into hold it just a second.
Outdoor activities such as walking, hiking, or running.
Yeah.
I forgot to mute everybody, so I have to go back.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So at this point, you will all be muted.
Thank you.
So now I'm starting over again. Late navel stays good until July, at least. Then I ran out of fruits. One of my biggest and most productive trees is Oro Blanco. Produces large fruits in great abundance. I probably give away hundreds of pounds of these every year. They're not my favorite. They're good, but they're not as tasty as some of the other citrus. So we can grow a lot of citrus. That's one thing. Agave does not produce edible fruits, but it does have edible parts. The literature says that the blossoms are edible. I tried them, but the pistils and stamens are really tough. And even with a lot of cooking, they aren't any good. However, the blossoms, the unopened blossoms, make excellent vegetables. And a plant like this has lots and lots of these. I show the picture on the right primarily because that's one of my all-time favorite pictures. Japanese raisin tree makes a good ornamental. It also does not bear edible fruits. The fruits are actually these BBs, little round BBs that you see there. Each of those typically holds 2 seeds, and you can grow Japanese raisin trees from those seeds. They germinate fairly well. The edible part is actually the swollen stem. That is very sweet and tastes quite a lot like a raisin. Persimmon is an excellent tree for Orange County. Show the foliage on the left and the fruits on the right. My fruits were seedless for about 2 decades. This tree is close to 40 years old. They were seedless for about the first 2 decades, and around the turn of the century, they started getting seedy. I believe this is because of the male flowers. The male flowers have only stamens, no pistil. And the blossom on the right is a female, and you can see a well-developed stigma at the center of the flower. Lychee, one of my favorites. This that happens to be Mauritius, has been very productive for the past many years. What is important about the lychees is the seed size. If you have huge seeds, that gives you less fruit. So people desire what they call chicken tongue seeds, which are, whoops. Chicken tongue seeds are the small seeds. And I found out actually by looking at a lot of different seeds that there isn't a twofold distribution, but there are many different sizes. The seeds aren't just chicken tongue or huge, but they're many different sizes. This on the left is the lychee flower. On the right is foliage. This can be a pretty tree. This is after a flush. Monstera deliciosa is widely used in interior decorations for its foliage. This plant appears in a lot of buildings, and office buildings. The flower, the corncob-like thing that's in the middle of the flower is called a spadix, and the fruit forms from that. The fruit it's hard to tell when it's ripe because they don't change color. The fruit is covered with pads of material that I like to call tiles, because to me they look a lot like the tiles on the space shuttle. When these tiles are tight on the fruit is considered poisonous because of high oxalic acid content. When the tiles fall off, it's considered edible. In fact, it is edible. Very few people are highly allergic to this, so I will always warn people I give this to that there may be that problem. Stone fruits are usually perform very poorly in my garden. I think they don't get enough cooling. The last few years, however, we've had quite good cooling, and I expect good harvest this year. That on the left is Sweet Treat Pleury. On the right is Spice Z Nectarplum. Spice Z usually sets very heavily. Unfortunately, not this year, but a lot of the others are doing very well, particularly the apricots. I'm going to have the best year ever for apricots if nothing happens to all the babies. All my apricot trees are really loaded this year. Starfruit looks great and is actually fairly tasty if you get it at the right stage. I'm showing stars up here that have 5 points and 6 points. So most of the fruits have 5 points, but a few have 6 points, and I've even found some with 7 and 8. Star fruits are often come in large clusters. The tree can produce very heavily, provide very heavy production. The flowers are pretty, but they're not very obvious. They're usually hidden by the plant's leaves. Rose apple has flowers that consist of about, each flower has about 300 stamens or filaments and one pistil. This is a delightful fruit. It tastes like what you would expect rose petals to taste like if they were edible. It is crisp, and this has about 4 seeds, typically 3 or 4 seeds. And it's hollow inside. The seeds will rattle if you shake the fruits. This is some of the foliage. It's attractive foliage, and they can be pruned into almost any shape. I prefer this beehive shape. I say beehive, but I really mean haystack. Although some beehives have this shape, but it's more like the old-fashioned haystack. That's the analogy I prefer. This can be pruned into many different shapes, and it can be a fairly large tree. I keep this pruned to 8 feet. Dragon fruits have become very popular in the last few years. I believe the one on the left is heck, forgot. Anyway, the ones in the container are Delight, and the one on the right side that I show fruits with a flower, and this is from Halley's Comet. This is interesting because it shows that once the plant fruits in the summer, it can go on to bloom again and fruit some more. So that these can be fairly productive plants. Papaya. I have very few papayas now, in fact, only 2, but they're both female. And the female, there's no male pollen around. There's no pollen around to pollinate the plants. So these females produce fruits without seeds. I thought initially that this was a dwarf Indonesian, the one we're looking at now, but it's about 12 feet tall. I finally realized I must have mixed my dwarf Indonesian plants with a plant I bought from a guy from Puerto Rico. So I think this is the Puerto Rican papaya. Pakistan mulberry, very vigorous tree, produces fruits that everybody seems to like. We always sell a lot of these at Greenscene. Every year we've sold out. This year we probably wouldn't, because a lot of people have grown them this year. But the vigor, a couple of years ago, this tree was about 25 feet high, and I thought that was not a proper height for a berry tree. So I cut it down to 10 feet in January, and the picture on the left is the tree after pruning. The picture on the right shows the tree in December of the same year, and it's grown back up to about 25 feet again. The 10-foot level is where the leaf color changes. So the newer leaves are lighter green. Feijoa can be a good fruit for the backyard. It's evergreen, can be an ornamental, has ornamental properties. The fruits on the right are Apollo, and just looking at them makes me hungry. These can be very tasty. Suriname cherry. The red ones can be terrible or the best fruit ever. Even on the same tree, my mother tree, I now have 11 Suriname cherries. Some of the seedlings of the mother tree turned out to produce black fruit, it's an unusual plant. And then I grafted two other black ones to some of the seedlings. So the black ones are a safer bet if you want to have something you enjoy eating. They tend to be sweeter and not have the bad properties that the red ones sometimes get. But the red ones can be the best of all when they're good. I find they're usually best when there are fewer fruits on the tree. Sometimes when my tree gets really loaded, when the mother tree gets really loaded, and it does that now and then, the fruits are practically inedible. But when there are only a few, they're great. We all know about avocados. My goal was to have ripe avocados year round, and if all these produced well, I would have that. But I've had a tremendous amount of problems with this, including root rot and other things. I'm about to submit an article to the Fruit Gardener on my avocados, where I'll describe some of those problems. Kiwis, I grow Hayward. The story is from the experts is that Hayward is not suited to Orange County climate. There are other varieties such as Vincent that are supposed to be better. But Hayward has done very well for me, and also for Bill Bebashoff, who lives in the hills, La Habra Heights, a few miles from me. We both have good production from Hayward, but I think most people would do better growing one of the other varieties that's more suitable to our climate. Kiwis are dioecious, meaning you need two plants. There's a male, as shown on the flower shown on the left, has only filaments, has only anthers. On the right, the females again have well-developed, elaborate stigma. The male pollen seems to be really effective for kiwis because it can go quite a way. It can. I've never seen a female flower that didn't get pollinated. Jujube has small, tiny, but fragrant flowers and glossy leaves. Produces a fruit that I enjoy quite a lot. They're a lot like apples. They're crisp, sweet, but not quite as juicy as apples. The trunk on the older wood, the bark is highly fissured and rough. I have two trees shown on the right in fall color, starting to turn yellow. The tree on the left is a Lee, and the tree on the right is a Lee grafted onto a root sucker, and the Lee that was grafted on is grafted onto Sherwood, which I got from Roger Meyer. Note that all the foliage down below that's still dark green, these are all the root suckers. This is considered a liability of jujube by many people. But they also present an opportunity because you can dig them up and graft them to make a new productive jujube plant. Tropical guava, the one on the left, is Turnbull. One on the right is, the flower on the right is from Thai. Both of these have their place. I used to think Turnbull was superior. Now after I learned about how the Asians eat the Asians love the Thai guava, and after I found out how they eat this. I think maybe I have a hard time saying which of the two is better now. Cherimoya, this is a well-known fruit that we can grow in Southern California and delicious. The picture on the left, it looks kind of sad. That's from my Pierce tree, and the picture on the right is from Elixir, a variety that was patented by our famous former member, now our late member, Eunice Mesner. Cherimoya is works very well for many years. It has produced heavily, requires no hand pollination. Mango is one of my all-time favorites, but I found out you have to get them at the right stage and maybe in the right year too. Kit mango is on the left and Lancetilla is on the right. Lancetilla produces fruits that are about 4 to 5 pounds, and they aren't all that good. The kit, in my experience, is the best I have. Although I also have the Lychee Pride, and that seems to be a really, really good one also. White sapote. Baby fruits on the left, mature fruits on the right. This next picture really doesn't belong here, but I don't know why I left it in, but I thought at first that the picture on the right showed a young white sapote plant. I'm pretty sure that's why I put it here. But when I looked at it more closely, I realized this is not white sapote. This is a Malabar chestnut. Figs do very well in our climate. Actually, one of my best figs is a seedling that I bought for $2 at a nursery that was trying to get rid of it. It's been very productive and has very tasty figs. But I also have several other varieties, and some of them are great, some of them are not so great. Pomegranate, everybody knows about pomegranates. I now have about 5 varieties when you count the grafts. But this is wonderful shown here. Parfianco is probably slightly superior for eating quality. I love wonderful, but Parfianco seeds are not as hard as wonderful seeds. So it probably has slightly superior eating quality. The flavor is almost the same as far as I can judge. Chinese pear, Shangli, Yali, Suli. These have a problem of getting fire blight. They get fire blight worse. In fact, they're the only trees in my garden that do get fire blight. When I first planted them, it was terrible. It looked like it was going to kill the tree. In fact, some supposed expert I talked to said the trees would never do any good, but that was totally wrong. That they have done very well. In fact, the fire blight has disappeared for decades. These are, I shouldn't say decades, maybe about a decade. I don't know. The fire blight was not a problem for about 10 years, and then last year it came back again, but not very aggressively. I hope it will not be bad in the future. Loquat grows well and is a common tree in Orange County. This happens to be gold nugget. Cereus peruvianus produces Peruvian apples. Some people call them cactus apples, but cactus apple is also used to refer to other fruits. So I think it's better to call them Peruvian apples. On the left, the fruit with the pink border is actually a dragon fruit, and I'm comparing that with the Peruvian apple. And they're very similar. In fact, a lot of people that I've talked to think that the Peruvian apple is better than the white dragon fruit. And I think I might agree with that. It's called Cereus peruvianus, but I understand in my reading when I was looking this up on the internet, it seems like this plant has no connection to Peru. How it got that name is a mystery to me at the moment. And this is my last slide. Macadamia. Macadamias do very well here. The problem is they tend to get huge. And this is now the largest tree in my garden. I used to prune it by climbing to the top. I found out I'm getting too old and can't do that anymore. So I may have to count on the Edison pruners to prune it. Anyway, it produces quite a lot of nuts. If the squirrels don't get them all, we can have a lot of macadamia nuts. So I'll now exit, and I'm not sure what we're going to be doing, but I suppose we'll be entertaining questions or comments. Okay, I've unmuted everybody.
Did Amr leave? Oh, okay, I don't see him. Where'd he go?
So, ladies and gentlemen who are on the website, it looks like we have 41 participants, which is absolutely wonderful. I am going to be sending out an email with our election this evening or first thing in the morning. So be sure to look for the email to vote for our county CRFG board members. And there is a email for you to respond to. Thank you very much.
It looks like I took only a half hour, so I could have talked more about the trees, but I think I accomplished what I intended, which was just to run through everything and give everybody an impression of how fortunate we are to be living in this climate in Orange County. Question I see here is, do all pomegranates grow to the same height? I suspect not. My pomegranate grows to a particular height, and then every year I cut it back to the same height, so it never gets beyond that. So I've never let them grow freely, so that they'll get as high as they can get. And I think that would be foolish to let pomegranates get as tall as they can. My guess is that they would get very tall because they're very vigorous plants, and they send up vertical shoots every year about 10 to 12 feet long. And if I let all of those grow, my tree would soon be out of control. Actually, John McNeil asked me before about whether any of these trees would be suited for a pot. And I'm certainly not the person to ask about that. Except for green seed plants, I dislike growing anything in pots. Somebody else may be able to answer that question.
Hi, Don. This is Dennis. How do you ripen your pears?
If that was a question, I didn't understand it.
So it's his birthday, and I want to
how do you ripen your pears?
Haven't really had any taken yet, so I thought maybe you could photograph.
These pears are good right off the tree.
Did you steal his license?
Yeah.
I've also
Borrow someone's license. They'll think you're a freak.
I've also grown Japanese pears.
6'1". Mm-hmm. And his proportions are a dream. Nipples exactly where you want them.
And that's for Mama.
Don, how big do the raisin trees get?
Just when.
Mine looks like it's stopped growing vigorously, and it's about 22 feet tall or so.
Jesse, I'm sure you've heard all about Jorge's show at Molly's.
But it's stopped growing pretty much. So,
well, the truth is, it's in a financial crisis.
So I don't think it's going to get much bigger than that.
On my part, you gave me the job, and that was.
Let's see. I'm going to.
You know, I think you were trying to protect her from her own grief, and I think it was a mistake. Andy Herrera deserves the job you gave me. She is more than earned it.
I hear too many people talking in the background.
I think maybe you want to mute Norm Johnson.
People can absolutely carry the coronavirus and this virus.
Good luck in your tournament of meal. What do you do?
Complete the census online, by phone, or by mail. Shape your future. Start here.
Don, I believe some people have televisions on, so you might want to make an announcement that if there's background noise in your home, please make sure that you are muted.
Okay, if anybody is watching TV, please mute yourself so that we don't hear the TV. I do hear some bunch of background noise, but I don't hear any more questions. So is it time to quit? Or do we want to do something else?
Sorry, I have, Don, I've got a question for you.
Okay. Shoot.
I've heard with apples, some of them you have to store for some time before before they are suitable for eating. Do you have a good way of separating out which types are which?
Apples?
Yes.
Well, I know from experience about the ones I grow. I find that, I don't think I understood the comment you made at the beginning that they need to be off the tree for a while before they're.
Yes, I've heard that some apples, and I don't know the varieties offhand, but when I used to live on the East Coast, there'd be fresh apples for sale in like March. Well, I guess they weren't fresh, and then I asked the grower, how'd you get them in March? And they'd say, well, we picked them in July and we put them in a big storage bin, and they get peak flavor after 6 months or something like that. And I know some others you can pick straight off the tree and eat. And so I've never fully understood the process with apples, which ones you have to store to get peak flavor and which ones you can eat fresh off the tree. So I was wondering if you had any experience with that.
From my experience, I'd say that that's misinformation. I used to work. As a kid, I used to work in apple orchards, doing thinning and picking, and so I have a fair amount of experience on that. And the apples they used to grow were always best immediately off the tree. Now they do put apples in. The reason they put apples in storage, they put them. I don't know whether they still do this, but they used to put them in a nitrogen atmosphere to keep them from oxidizing and keep the temperature right about 31 degrees or so. And that otherwise apples do deteriorate with time, and some of them get pretty bad. Like Red Delicious was one that gets bad. It doesn't hold very well. But others like Fuji, I've found from my own Fuji tree that Fujis hold very well. I was still picking high quality Fujis from my apple tree in January. They start getting ripe about October, but they were still good into January. But I'm pretty sure any apple I've ever heard about is always best right off the tree.
All right. Thanks, Don.
And they do deteriorate.
Don, this is Dennis. Did you grow your papayas from seed or from a pot? I've had problems with papayas in pots. They seem to last 6 to 8 months and then winter kill.
I've grown all my papayas from seed except one, and that is probably the one that I showed. Because I bought that from a guy who said it was from Puerto Rico, and but I've grown hundreds of papayas from seed, and I used to grow a lot more of them, and I tried to grow some more. I found a really good one in the market, and so I tried to grow the seeds from that one. So I had 22 or 26 nice little seedlings, and they all disappeared one night from rabbit issues. So I'm short of papayas right now, but the one I have is very good. The two I have are very good.
Hey, Don, this is Charlie. In the chat is a question. Kathy asks, can you hand pollinate mangoes?
Oh, I'd say that would be a fool's errand. I mean, the individual flowers are really tiny. I don't know how you would ever, well, I don't know why you have to do that. Ordinarily, my mangoes set a lot of fruits, and I have to pick off a lot of them.
Yeah.
So, well, okay, that's not a good answer.
Yeah, Don, I was told that you could spritz the flowers with honey water mixture, and that would attract the bees, and then the bees would do the pollinating.
Yeah. Yeah, that may work. Yeah, actually, good old Gary Matsuoka said that's how to get your avocados pollinated, as I recall. He said spray them with sugar water. And maybe if you do that with mangoes, mango flowers are roughly similar to avocado flowers, so maybe that would work. Okay, do all pomegranates fruit, or are some ornamental? Some are ornamental. I don't know much. I don't know anything about the ornamental ones, but I'm pretty sure there are ornamental ones. How many years does it take to start producing fruit? I think like 3 years or so, maybe 4. But it's been a long time since mine were small enough to judge that. Well, let's see, that's not really true. I have, my Parfianca is not that old, but I think it started producing after about 4 years or so, 3 years. They don't take a tremendous amount of time. What would you recommend for large patio pots, says John McNeil? Maybe Isabel can, is Isabel there? Maybe she can answer that. I really hesitate to answer any question on pots, growing plants in pots, because I've had no experience with that except for babies, for seedlings and young plants. Should I close
John,
it?
this is Dennis. Do you have a lot of bird damage from pecking, like say for your persimmons, apples, things like that, or your dragon fruit as well?
Wherever Josh is.
I have bird damage, but birds actually mess up my veggies more than my fruits. I have rats that cause some fruit problems, but
I turned it off and it's going out. I don't know how to. Do you have? Oh, you have that on already. Oh, Alka. Oh, I'm crying.
They can hear you, you know.
Is somebody talking? My worst pests are the varmints who rob my avocados. Those are the ones that do the most damage. Birds do a little bit of damage to fruits. Rats do a little bit of damage, but I think the raccoons do a lot of damage to my avocados. They steal a lot of fruits. Birds have done a lot of damage to my veggies, especially to peas, that they can eat your peas to the ground. Anything else?
I don't have anything, but thank you so much. That was interesting, Don.
Don, did you look at the group chat list to see if you missed any questions?
I'm looking at it. Oh, wait. Oops, I missed a lot of questions.
One question is, has greenscene been canceled?
And the answer is yes. Okay, let me take a second to look at these questions. I didn't realize, I didn't scroll down, so okay, I received 4 pomegranate scions at the scion exchange. Only one has developed a few sprouts. How long should I give them before I give up? Well, every year I grow lots of pomegranates from cuttings. Some of them do better than others. Steve Berger says he gets about 100%. I don't get that much success, but I wait at least about 3 months. I start them in January and give them about 3 months before I give up. Actually, I don't give them up. I put several in a pot, and almost always at least one of them starts growing. Parfionca seems to be harder to start than Wonderful. What Wonderful seems to start pretty easy. So, but even with Parfionca, when I put 3 in a pot, nearly always at least one of them starts growing. So I don't take out the others that aren't growing. I just leave them with the one that's growing and then take them out at the end when I repot them in the winter. Okay. Wondering if you can hand pollinate mangoes. Well, we already discussed that. I can't imagine doing that. The mango flower looks a lot like the lychee flower I showed. It consists of hundreds of tiny florets. And maybe you could get the pollen by shaking the inflorescence onto something and then maybe spraying that back on. But I think that would be a really difficult procedure. Maybe it would work.
Strawberry guava.
Should I contact the OC fruit salesperson to list my tree collards? Okay, so this is a person who's grown tree collards for greenscene, and since we aren't having greenscene, she wants to know what to do with her tree collards. We aren't taking any plants, but we would like a list of what you've grown. If you've grown something for greenscene, we would like a list of what you have grown, because we want to try to sell some of these things later on in some way or other. So if you have grown plants to donate to greenscene, please still send me your list.
Don, also have them include the heights so we can get an idea of sizes too.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Include what?
The heights of the plants, if possible.
Oh.
That way we can have an idea of how big it is.
Well, that's asking a lot. Well, okay, I can try that.
Didn't he just?
And someone asks, should I try to sell my trees that I've been growing for greenscene? By all means, if you can. I sell a lot of mine out of my yard and just donate the money to the club. So I've been doing it for years. Other people have been doing it. Steve Berger has done it, and others. Anything else? It looks like Zoom has allowed us a lot of extra time. Maybe I shouldn't have gone through my overview so quickly, but I suspect you were less bored this way.
We must just beginning this talk.
Don, thanks so much for being our first speaker. Really appreciate the work that you did and the presentation this evening. So round of applause for you for doing your presentation for all of us.
Well, do you see the message about looking for star fruit and something else?
Yeah, that's me.
I didn't, that's a new message?
Yeah, that's one I just added, Don.
Oh, okay.
So if anybody's got something that they want to sell, I'm looking for star fruit and Jabba.
Well, I have 4 starfruit plants that I'd be happy to sell you. We charge quite a lot for those.
All right. Name your price.
Well,
Don, how long does it take a starfruit to fruit? How old is it?
Good question. It took mine fruited with the, say 4 or 5 after about 3 years. But then it didn't fruit, and then it didn't fruit again, and then it fruited, it gave me 4 or 5 again. So it took about 9 years before it really started fruiting regularly. And now it fruits heavily almost every year. I say almost. Last year, I pruned it heavily, and that seemed to shock it. So I had no fruits last year. But that's an anomaly because otherwise it's been fruiting pretty heavily ever since that 9-year lapse.
Don, if you were to take one of those scions from the tree that's heavily fruiting, would that stimulate a graft on a new tree sort of thing?
You're saying if you take a scion from a tree that's producing a lot of fruit, is that going to speed up fruiting on a plant you graft it to?
Yeah, I was going to leave.
Well, at least you should have a better chance of getting fruit than if you take it from a tree that's not producing.
Yeah, right. Okay, hear what you're saying.
Don, there's one more question from John Marzolino. Asked, what is a good Cheramoya to grow?
Well, a lot of people say El Bumpo is best. I have a Pierce, and I think it's great. I used to think my Elixir was not that good, but in recent years, I now think it's great. I don't know. They all seem quite good to me. They're very sweet, delicious. I'm not like some people. It has to have the very best. And mine, the ones I grow are plenty good for me. So in other words, you're asking the wrong person.
I have another question about the Cherimoya. I have a Selma, and it is almost 18 years old and has never fruited. Is that typical for Selma, or is that a problem with that particular one?
Unfortunately, you're asking the wrong person. I have no experience with Selma.
Okay.
Basically, I know a fair amount about the things I grow and not much about the things I don't grow.
Somebody had a question about your avocados.
Oh, well, I had 2 outstanding hass trees. They got root rot. In fact, in their 6th year, I estimated over 1,000 fruits on my 2 hass trees each. And the very next year, they fell into decline. I cut them way back, hoping that they would with less of a burden that they would grow out well. That they have never fruited since. With my reed, one year it was a great tree, and then in 2012 it way overproduced. I counted 50 fruits on one 6-foot branch, and the rest of the tree was similarly loaded. And so I tried to get information from our avocado experts about whether I ought to thin these. I should have used common sense and thinned them, but nobody recommended thinning, so I let them go. And by about midsummer, it was dropping fruits. Then it started dropping leaves, got horribly sunburnt. So then I went to a seminar at the University of California in Riverside and found out about polyphagous shot hole borers, and I realized I had a couple of polyphagous shot hole borers in the tree. So I cut it way back, cut it back to 5 feet, and it has never really done much since then. And then in 2018, we had this heat wave. It looked like that was the kiss of death for my poor reed tree. It looked like it was done for, but it has grown out since then, and I hope it will start fruiting again. But I think it's probably weakened by all its travails, and so I bought two baby reed trees and put them in last summer. So I think reed is one of the very best avocados. It's partly because it produces fruits in the summer when not too many others do. And when it was producing a lot, I harvested all the way from June to December. No other tree I have comes close to that.
Did you see the fig question?
Excuse me?
Did you see the fig question?
Oh, yeah. Figs don't taste good. That's a common problem. I found like Suriname cherries, figs can be very variable. Sometimes they're quite good, and sometimes they're kind of bland. I don't know. I have not noticed anything about the weather or anything else that would be responsible for that. So, in other words, I don't know what you can do to make a fig taste better if it doesn't taste good. If it tastes, most of mine, all of mine taste good at some time or other, but even the ones that taste really good also produce ones that don't taste very good. So they seem to be highly variable. So if they don't taste good one year, I would let them go at least a couple more years to see whether they might taste good later. Because if they don't taste good at one point, doesn't mean they're always not going to taste good. They may improve.
Can I interject real fast on the figs?
Go ahead.
So figs can be very variable depending on the cultivar. So some are late ripening varieties, which do well for us here. If you're inland, because you can still get it if they're late ripening, so they ripen in October or November. You've got to be inland a little bit where you can still get some heat for those to ripen correctly. So a lot of figs, to get good taste, need heat to ripen. So for the East Coasters, for example, they need an early ripening variety to get any sort of good tasting crop. So people who live on the coast here in California, a late ripening variety will produce figs, but they won't taste very good because they never quite get the degree of heat you can get even if you're 10 or 15 miles inland. There are some varieties that will produce decent figs, but they'll taste a lot better if you have the Fig Wasp. So in my neighborhood, we have the Fig Wasp, but there are some people who may not have it around. It's kind of spotty in parts of California. And then there are some varieties are very water sensitive. So if they water regularly, some figs will absorb all that water and split. Some are water or split resistant. Or rain resistant, so that's what's prized on the East Coast, where they can get a lot of rain in the summer. And then there are just some cultivars that just don't taste very good at all. So it could be, like Don was saying, they could be very variable, and there could be a lot of factors playing into it. But figs are so easy to grow, I'd say just buy a different tree and see what the results are. Or come to the Scion Exchange, you can get a lot of different scions to try.
Right. We always sell a lot of figs at greenscene cheap, usually for $10. So anybody can grow a lot of figs for very little money.
How do you encourage a fig wasp?
That wasn't for me.
So the fig wasp lives or overwinters in the male fig, what's called a capra fig. And so you would basically need a capra fig tree or a male fig tree growing. Some male fig trees produce one crop, some produce two, some produce three. If you have one that produces three crops, it can sustain a colony of the fig wasp year round. That means the colony doesn't have to hop from tree to tree to tree to sustain itself over the course of a year. So if you got yourself a capra fig tree, and usually someone who's got a capra fig, they'll say, my tree produces figs, but they taste terrible. They're always dry. So a capra fig, if you open it, looks dry, and they taste terrible. And those can host the fig wasp. So if you have a capra fig tree, you can actually go online and buy figs that have the fig wasp in them, a colony. You'll just get them mailed to you. They're called Profici, but you could just type in fig wasp inside figs, for sale, something like that. And then you can just buy some, and you just kind of hang them on your tree or hang them around the fig, and the fig wasp will make its way in. Alternatively, if you didn't want to spend time on a male fig tree or a capra fig, you could just buy the wasp-laden figs and just hang them around your yard, which is what some farmers do. Even if they have a capra fig, they'll just cut off the fruit that have the fig wasps and place them next to the figs they want caprified. So that's the fig wasp colony.
Someone asked whether I planted my new reed trees. Yes, I have. How are they doing? They're doing quite well, thank you. But they're still babies. I expect to have good growth from them this year. I was hoping to get a root rot resistant avocado because ever since I had the problem with the Hess trees, I didn't want to grow anything but root rot resistant. However, Gary Matsuoka disappointed me. He promised me some root rot resistant reeds, and it turned out they didn't come in. So I bought ones that weren't root rot resistant. That's why I got two of them. Okay, somebody asked, I bought one of the white figs from the person selling them at the last meeting. When should those get ripe? Maybe our fig expert. Is that you, Hassan? Khalid? Were you the one that is talking about the knowledgeable about figs?
Yes, that might have been me. Yes,
okay, I can't answer that question, but maybe Khalid can.
So, sorry, can you repeat the question for me, Don?
I bought one of the white figs from the person selling them at the last meeting. When should those get ripe?
Oh, so that was not me. I was not selling figs at the last meeting. But if you know the cultivar, there is a database online. I don't remember, but if you type in like fig database, like that, you can type in the name of the cultivar and it'll let you know when people have ripened that fig and when it appears to be in peak flavor. Some figs are best eaten if you let them dry a little bit on the tree, and some others, you don't let them dry. You eat them when they're very plump. So I'm sorry, but that was not me though. Sorry.
Did you buy a tree or did you just get cuttings? Because I know Steve Berger was selling yellow long neck cuttings at the meeting last time. That person still on that was interested? Yeah, he got cuttings. I think those were probably the yellow long neck fig cuttings that Steve Berger had. Is Steve on the call? I don't see his name.
Steve is on the call. I don't know if he's actually active, but his name is there.
Oh, look at a different background. What is that?
What?
Peaches? What?
I don't know.
Oranges. Oranges. Figdatabase.com. Look on what type? Really tight.
But with regard to the fig, you can just watch it and see when it'll ripen. And if you have scions this year, it may fruit for you at the end of the year. But don't trust that, because the first year fruit may be delayed just because it's a fresh scion. You wait till the next year to figure it out. You can look up online how to tell when to pick the ripe fruit. It'll start to droop and dangle. It'll enlarge. You'll go from a small fig, and then it'll enlarge quickly over the next week or two. And when you see it enlarging quickly, you know it's going to ripen any day. And all of a sudden, it'll droop. It'll look like it's about to fall off. Typically, that's when figs will have peak flavor. Although some varieties you can wait for them to dry a little bit. So I'd say even if if Steve isn't able to answer, or if you just have a generic cutting and you're not sure what it is, grow it out over the next 2 years or so. Don't go by the fruit the first year. Hopefully that's helpful.
Daypad asked, what kind of fig scions did he bring?
The name of the fig is yellow long neck fig. And if Steve Berger is the one that had those cuttings, so once we get back together, you could ask Steve directly because that's his favorite fig, or you could send him an email. Any one of us could give you his email address.
Yeah, he's still listed as a participant, but apparently he went to sleep.
Is he? I didn't see him.
Now, just for fun, last year there was a fig called Robert's Golden Rainbow, and this does tie into yellow long neck, so bear with me. But yeah, Robert's Golden Rainbow seems to be a phenomenal tasting fig. He's a grower in the Santa Barbara area, and when some folks tracked him down and asked him how he ended up with that fig tree, he said his nephew gave it to him about 20 years ago, and his nephew picked it up from the rare fruit growers from the Scion exchange. And it seems, so people who tracked it back think it may be the yellow long neck that was passed around about 20 years ago. So some people think this Robert's Golden Rainbow, which a lot of people really, really like, and yellow long neck may be the same fig. So if it is indeed, then you picked up a really great one. All right, sorry, I'll stop hijacking the meeting.
Charlie posted a link for figdatabase.com.
Yes, I believe that's it. I didn't see anything under yellow long neck, but I bet if you look up Roberts or Golden Rainbow, you'll find some information. Yeah, Golden Rainbow. If you look up Golden Rainbow, it's got some nice pictures there. So that's my 2 cents.
All right. Well, Don, thank you very much again. I'm going to exit. It was a very good first attempt, I think, and congratulations to you. Well done.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
See ya.
Thanks, everybody.
And stay virus free.
So if there are no objections, I'll end the meeting now.
Okay.
I hear no objections.
That was excellent. Don. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Oh, some guy had a question about avocado seedlings grafting.
Oh, okay. I'm still grafting avocado seedlings. Okay, that now, is Denny still here?
I don't see him on the list.
I don't see him.
Okay, well, this is not a good question for me. I have never grafted avocados because there are so many other people in our chapter that do.
Oh, it looks like a general grafting question almost.
When I want another avocado variety, I buy a tree. Because avocados have high priority for me. I want a whole tree or none at all.
It sounds like you're at Daypad that you're asking predominantly about how to tell what's a good quality scion, and you just want to make sure the buds are swelling, or if they're not swelling, that's okay. But if they're swollen too much, and you can start to see there may be a ½ centimeter projecting outwards, like they're going to bud out any day, that's not going to be a good quality scion, because you can graft it and it'll leaf out in the next week or so and then end up dying. So it sounds to me like that's what you're asking.
So then what do you want? You want the buds to be very small? Khaled?
Yes, hello? So I would say from my experience, you want the buds either not developed or swollen, but not having committed. Once you start to see the little projections where it looks like there's a leaf starting to grow from where that bud is starting to turn into a leaf or a shoot, then I'd say that's probably a little too far gone. doesn't mean it can't be done, but I would say, like, if I were sharing with someone, I would say that's not a good quality one.
Just